Morning, everyone. It's been a good start, with all those little random noises in the background. Feels like we're all in the same room. It's pretty cool. So, yeah, technically I'm doing a welcome, so you don't have to ask me any questions at the end. Is that a good cop out to start off with? This is agreement and nods. Nah, cool. I'm a Gundungurra man. My granddad, my great grandmother are from the Garguree clan. If you understanding of the topography of the mountains, that's now called Warragamba. My mum was Aunty Mary King, and she was born in the gully at Katoomba that we call Katoomba in our language. I'm just going to briefly go through a few slides to share my connection with country. I spoke the other day at a webinar, and we talked about disconnection, reconnection, connection. And I came from the Aboriginal perspective, but I think all of us at this point in time are coming out of that sort of sense of feeling, hence why we're on here today. And I think to sit down and look at this ecology, the arts, our connection to country, how we sit on country is a beautiful way, in my opinion, to come back to earth for all of us. We got up this morning and went out the back, and there were two king parrots sitting out our acacia longifolia, just munching on some beautiful fresh seed. And then we turned around and looked out the front, and 7 gang cockatoos just flew through the gully here where we live in Hazelbrook. You know, it just gives you that sense of beauty, sense of connection, and that sense of belonging that we've had for thousands of years. Next slide, please. Recently, I've been listening to a few podcasts from ABC and just listening to stories across the country. We said just before we joined the big session that a lot of us have been able, through some of these webinars, to actually connect right across the country. And so hearing a little bit about the black cockatoos over in Western Australia made me think about my mum's connection to country. That's my mum sitting in what we call a gibbagunya, a rock shelter, out at McMahon's Point. And her journey, her connection to country was in what I would call that living world. She sat in a rock shelter here. It's a massive rock shelter where the goannas, the lyrebirds, where the emu and the lyrebird people met and sat, and there's artifacts. And she started her journey of reconnection. She was removed as a little girl. It took her a while to come back to what we would call home. And then her sense of belonging and a sense of beauty with this beautiful piece of country that we call Gundungurra country began. Next slide, please. My mum always loved trees. And I remember just parking out here. We used to camp out here. It's called Battleship Tops because of that rock just behind her. And we did a restoration of country here. Someone had parked a car under there, set fire to it to get rid of our art. And we were able to sit there and restore the beauty and to recreate the images. Well, my mum, in her beautiful way, walked around and just touched the trees, looked at the plants, and had that beautiful connection. And then we all sat together and had what we call darbo, a cup of tea, and enjoyed the restoration of that site. Next slide, please. It was a long way from 60 years before, in the 1930s, when my mum was removed from the gully. This was the picture they took of her before they would have stuck her in the paper to advertise her as a domestic or a farmhand. An 8-year-old child removed from country because of the simple fact she was Aboriginal. Next slide, please. In the late 80s, we went up to my grandmother, my mum's mother's grave at Katoomba, and there was a note on there. And it said, if you know this lady, please ring this number. I'd grown up a little bit with the fella in the background. That's Uncle Harold. He was a tracker, used up in the mountains to track down people that were lost, basically robbed the local stores. I never met Aunty Sharon Hall's dad. He's the man in the glasses. That's Uncle Len. He basically lived down on Darrabalak clan country in the Megalong, and you'll have a sensational speaker tomorrow. It feels like I'm pushing Ian's card a lot, isn't it? But my cousin Ian's on tomorrow. Sensational man. His clan country down in the Megalong, and that little lady in the middle is my mum, and the lady to the right of her is Mary Egan. They hadn't seen each other for close on 60 years. And then through the fact that we could sit back on country, they got a photo together in Katoomba. I think it's the only photo that we got as we reconnected, as we began that journey. My mum was so proud to stand with her family. 1934 removed, 50 more years later, they stood together. Next slide, please. So I got to begin my journey. Because my mum reconnected, I started to sit on country more. I live near an occupation shelter at Hazelbrook. So I love pulling weeds, sitting on country, just seeing and sensing that beauty, the living culture, that living entity that we call country, in my opinion, is one of the most beautiful artistic pieces you'll ever find. So we started to reconnect. My mum and I didn't get on a lot as a kid, but as I sat on country and she came down with us, we did a lot of bush care, and that little girl outside the hut in the gully was in a little lady full of life. I'm sure if she was with us today, she'd probably tell me off for showing this photo. So if I better watch out when I get out the front, because that little red-bellied black snake might come past, reminding me, you be careful, David King, your mum's watching you. But here we are down in the Megalong, just talking about country, the joy of connecting, seeing that beauty, sitting in those trees, talking about the stories, the artifacts, the water, everything that makes country so beautiful. Next slide, please. So I got to share stories. I was able then, through that connection, to start talking about country, the use of plants, the way we paint it up, the reasons and all the stories around our connection. Next slide, please. Also got to wear good suits, eh? And then came the fires, hey. My mum loved Narrowneck. She walked Narrowneck as a kid. One, to earn pocket money, and two, to sit with her family before she was removed. She might have gone there afterwards, but we're not sure. And I think it was January last year. Time's gone so fast. After those fires, to go up to Narrowneck and to see what I could only describe as death, to hear nothing, to see nothing, and to see this tree reaching out like the hand of my mum, just in pain, just trying to understand, just trying to fathom. Me and my girlfriend Bella, we just cried. We were just up there. We took these photos. It was so moving. It hurt. We really need to start to look at how we can care for country. And seminars like these, where we gather together to get people to, as I say, look out and look up, is what we need to do. We need to get people to connect, to understand, so we don't see this pain, to capture these moments, to reflect that we maybe hopefully never go there again. Because those of us in the mountains have seen the beauty on this site now, with those pink flannel flowers that came out, and the xanthorrheas and the spears that came out of this site. But the destruction, we need to get the balance. Next slide, please. So I had a cup of tea, I reflected, and we've worked so hard over the last couple of years to try to see how we can ensure we don't keep on going there. How do we keep not just the Blue Mountains, but this planet healthy? How do we get people to understand the impacts? Next slide. How do we regain that connection? But have the honour of being one of the people down in the gully. That was my beeper to say I got 3 seconds, so I'm doing well. Watch this. This will be a quick 3 seconds. How do we get people to connect? I have the honour of being one of the volunteers at Garguree Swampcare, and I see people come down there from the whole community and connect to country. They take photos. There's a great couple on this that I spotted earlier that record the birds. There are people that sample water, their kids that play. We have the campfire, we tell the stories, and the beauty starts to grow. We need to create those images that drive people to sit in that silence and peace of country. Next slide, please. Our actual classroom was on country. This is a rock shelter. I never take a wide angle because some of you smart mob on here always can work out where I am. It's not too far from home, but it's a beautiful picture of Byami. You can see the lyrebird and the emu ochre prints. You can see the beginning of a journey where Byami is there in the middle. This cave begins a journey. And I hope that today and tomorrow, as we sit and listen and talk, that all of us connect and begin that journey. In my language, Gulumbanyan Gundungurra Marinu, I'm a Gundungurra man. My songline goes through the Burragurang, Katoomba, and to the Deribalact country. Punai Daru is Mother Earth. Let's protect it. Let's look after these ancestral lands. Byami, God, Mother Earth. Let's have those words, Yadang Baral, which means day good, just all across our country. Welcome to this great seminar. I hope that you have a great time. I hope that we, as I said the other day, that we all get to sit together and we all begin to tell our stories together, that we can create images that for thousands of years. This art cave is at least 600 years old and the art behind it goes longer. Let's make our stories go forever, please. Next slide, please. My spirit bird's a yellowtail black cockatoo. Bella and I get to see those quite often. Let's hope by the end tomorrow, around lunchtime, that our spirits will fly high, that our birds will connect, that we connect, we learn, and we all journey and grow together. Yadang me. Welcome from elders past and present. I hope you have a great weekend together at this seminar. Cheers.